So let's have a lesson on this piece now. You can get the sheet music, there's a link for that underneath the video from my site, but you can just watch the lesson for free and pick up lots of tips and whatnot. Now, I'm assuming that if you're playing this piece, you're already fairly advanced, so you don't need tons of advice from me necessarily. So I think what I'll do is I'll just mention a couple of small things that I think you should consider when you're first learning the piece. And then I'll just walk through the piece with you, play through the piece with you, and just tell you about my approach to some of the sections, anything that I changed or edits that I did, and just like how I approached playing the piece. So that maybe that helps you speed up the process of you learning the piece, or give you something to think about, or to agree with me or disagree with me about. So, of course, this piece has a melody, so play the melody on its own. And go through and make sure you kind of understand the piece in that regard. And that also you have a strong sense of a valse or a waltz, you know, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I would, at first, you may have to practice it very slow, so you might set your metronome to like 3 beats per bar, but later on you probably just want to set it to 1 beat per bar. So like I'm playing at around like 58, I would say. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But like really, like counting 1, 2, 3 is a bit much. It's really just 1 beat per bar. You know, it's just a feeling of the first beat. Now, speaking of the metronome, after you've gone over the melody a little bit and played the melody on its own, just phrasing it very sweetly and very nicely, very nice. This is a very romantic era piece, and it's filled with lots of that romanticism and rubato and things like that. So you can learn the melody like that on its own first, make it very sweet and very romantic. But then what I would do is I would put the metronome on to a very slow tempo in 3. So maybe you want to put it to like 100 or something. And play through the piece with the metronome. You know, you be soft with the accompaniment, loud with the melody, but play it with the metronome. you will find it difficult to play this piece with the metronome. But you don't have to play with the metronome at full speed. The rubato that takes place in the piece really helps make the piece a lot easier. But I think what you want to do first is make sure that you have a strong rhythmic foundation. Like the rhythms that Tarrega wrote on the page are as close as you can get to the rhythms of the piece, minus rubato, right? So being able to play it with the metronome will give you a solid rhythmic foundation. So that's what I did first, is I learned each section almost like a separate piece, because there's like, you know, there's like 4 main sections, or 3 main sections, one's repeated, but learn those 3 sections solidly with the metronome so that you know what the correct rhythms are, and that you're able to play it at a slower tempo with generally good technique in that rhythmic framework. Once you can do that, and you've spent some good time working with the metronome in that way, you can put it away and start adding some more rubato. But I just find that both myself and students as well, when they play this piece, they play it with too much rubato, or they've never played it with the correct rhythms, and that throws them a little bit. It takes away from some of the structure of the piece, the rhythmic structure, and just takes away from a strong foundation for the piece. So let's walk through it. Here, you have to switch at some point, so you might as well switch here. Just make sure that you color this F sharp to be similar to this F sharp. I go even a little bit more tasto there, just to like make sure those 2 F sharps match, and that this one isn't super bright or something like that. Match, color. It's all straightforward here. So remember, when you're doing these barres, get the melody note first, and then get into your chord, just so it's not disrupting the melody. That harmonic, I have to move my hand back and get a little bit ponticello to make it clear, otherwise it tends to be mushy. Same, this is a repeat, right? Except here. Then lots of guide finger opportunities. This piece is not that tricky because of all the guide fingers. There's other ways you could do that ending there, but I've decided to hold the chord as written. It's not that hard of a stretch, as long as you're in a good position. So for the second section, some of you will probably find this section the hardest. I actually found the next section the hardest, but this section here. So one thing you can do is you can first learn it without the ornaments. That kind of takes away some of the, it'll make the left hand more secure if you don't do the little grace notes. So you could practice it like that until you feel very solid with it, and then add them later. But again, lots of guide fingers to help. Now here, I don't play the grace note, the slide, because I really want the 5th string to be barred as well. I don't want to like lift and then play again. Some people might play this and then rebar, but I just don't like it. And I tried for a long time to do like a barre slide, but it just creates that much extra noise. So I just ditched it. So no, I don't add the grace note there. So you can experiment with it if you like. I just like solidly place it. Plus it's such a stretch and it's kind of awkward, so I just got rid of the slide and went for security. This section's hard to play with a metronome, but learn it with a metronome slowly because there's so many glissandos and things. Like I've seen people play it and their rhythms they're starting to not have 3 beats per bar. So even if you have rubato, there should be still a beat structure happening. That might seem weird to jump way down, but it's not that bad. Just make that a sweet spot that you hit and don't shortchange it. And then calmly go down. Just don't hop off that note and clip it. Just make sure it gets some sustain and then calmly move on. This section here, just end up with your first finger there and open strings with a closed G sharp there. Now, the original has this. It's a little awkward to do that. And again, depending on your tempo, like I don't do that much of a writ. If you did a big writ there, you could do what he suggests, which is like 2-1-4 into 3-1-4, which is kind of an awkward switch during a glissando. It does actually kind of work, but at faster tempos, I was finding it pretty sloppy and there's all this noise. And so I took it out, as many performers do. Most. I actually found it kind of hard to find a video where people did it, but just place it. It's a pretty thick section with lots of chords and shifts. I aimed for a cleaner performance rather than an overly romantic one. So you could decide though, if you do a big writ, you can do it. It's not crazy. But I don't want to do a huge writ just before the cadence. So I took that chord glissando out. This next section is actually the section that I found the most difficult. The barres are fine, but when I went to record it, it was hard to make them clean. I was getting some buzzing and stuff because once you do the repeat, your hand kind of starts to get a little bit tired, even if your barres are pretty good. And there's some stretches between fingers during the barre, so I just found it a little bit awkward. It's not that bad, but you'll want to practice it carefully, with careful attention to keeping your barre as straight as possible. It's not that bad. I'm making too much of it, but that chord change there, just get your bass note and that, and then get the rest of the notes on the next beat. You have enough time to do that, so. It's so nice at slow tempos, but when you play a little bit faster, some intense stuff, and like grabbing those chords flawlessly, you just have to know them really well and make sure that you're placing them carefully so that it doesn't get too sloppy. See, like I lift my bar, you could probably hear it there, maybe. Right after I rebar, just in case I've like gone sloppy a little bit. When the 4-bar phrase is over, I rebar just to make sure that I'm keeping things in order, right? This next section is it's really not that bad, but you have to get used to the fingering. There's some like stretchy stuff going on. So take it slow, learn the melody first, of course, but then when you learn your chord shapes, just carefully memorize them and go like that. No, sorry. 2, that way. play 4 can play here. It's not hard, it's just kind of awkward. And that's pretty much the end of the piece. These sections repeat, but then it just goes back to the beginning, and it's just exactly the same. It's a del capo in the original, I think, but I've written it out again just to put it there. So, like I said, when you first learn the piece, just learn that nice melody on its own, just like being very musical with it, with the phrasing and the legato and stuff. Then when you start adding the chords in, I would put that metronome on just to make sure that you actually have some rhythmic structure, because it's a heavily romantic piece and there's going to be lots of rubato. But when you're first learning it, it's really good if you just learn it in time, I think. And then you can relax it a little bit and add some rubato in there.